The space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was huge, bigger than most cities back on Earth. Ships from different worlds docked at its many ports. Today was special. Today, 4 different species would try to talk instead of fight. Tae-min Park walked through the station's main corridor. His black diplomatic suit felt strange after years in military uniforms. He had fought in 3 different wars before becoming a diplomat. The scars on his hands told stories he rarely shared. The corridor was wide enough for 20 people to walk side by side. Alien beings moved past him. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others crawled on many legs or floated in the air. All of them stared at him. Humans were still new to this part of space. Tae-min reached the main meeting room. Inside, 3 groups sat at different tables. They did not talk to each other. They barely looked at each other. 200 years of war had taught them to be careful. The Cathari Empire sat at the left table. They looked like giant lizards that walked upright. Their scales were green and brown. Sharp teeth filled their mouths. Admiral Valara was their leader here. She had conquered 12 worlds in her lifetime. Her claws could cut through steel. The hegemony took the middle table. They looked like huge insects. 6 arms each, 4 eyes that could see in all directions. Counselor Kixmoth spoke for them. His kind had built the biggest fleet in known space. They controlled trade routes across 50 star systems. The Void Syndicate sat at the right table. These beings were made of living crystal. They could walk through walls and become invisible. Warlord Nulvex was their representative. His people raided ships and planets for fun. They enjoyed causing fear. Tae-min took his seat at the 4th table. The human table. He was alone. Earth had sent only 1 diplomat. The aliens found this strange. They always traveled in large groups for protection. "We begin," said the station's AI voice. "This is the first peace summit in galactic history. Each species will present their terms." Admiral Valara stood first. Her 7-foot frame cast a long shadow. "The Cathari Empire has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We are the strongest. We are the fastest. We are the most dangerous. Other species bow to us or die." She pointed one clawed finger at Tae-min. "But humans are different. You came from nowhere. You built colonies in our space. You fought our ships and won, yet you never declared war. You never tried to conquer us back. Why?" Counselor Kixmoth's 4 eyes all turned to look at Tae-min. "Yes, this puzzles us too. When we first met humans, we prepared for war. We brought our largest fleet. But you only defended yourselves. You never attacked our homeworlds." Warlord Nulvex's crystal body made a sound like breaking glass when he laughed. "We tried to raid your supply ships. Your escorts were too strong. We tried to attack your colonies. Your defenses were too good, but you never came after us. Other species always come after us." All eyes in the room focused on Tae-min. He stayed calm. Years of combat had taught him not to show fear. He stood slowly and looked at each alien leader. "You want to know why we're different," Tae-min said. His voice was quiet but clear. "You want to know why we don't fear you the way others do?" "Yes," Admiral Valara said. She leaned forward. Her yellow eyes studied his face. "Every species we meet either runs away or fights desperately. They fear us. But humans, you treat us like we're just another problem to solve. Why don't you dread us?" The room became very quiet. Even the station's air recyclers seemed to stop humming. This was the question that had brought them all here. This was what the galaxy wanted to understand. Tae-min looked at Admiral Valara for a long moment. He remembered his first battle. He remembered the fear in his stomach. He remembered learning that fear could be a teacher instead of a master. "Because you're not the scariest thing we've ever faced," he said simply. The words hit the room like a physical force. Admiral Valara's scales changed color, turning darker. Counselor Kixmoth's mandibles clicked rapidly. Warlord Nulvex's crystal body flickered between solid and transparent. "Impossible," Admiral Valara said. She slammed her clawed hand on the table. The metal dented. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have destroyed entire fleets. Whole species flee when they see our ships." "We know," Tae-min said. "We've read your history. We've studied your wars. You are dangerous. You are powerful. You are deadly." "Then why?" "Because we've faced worse," Tae-min interrupted. "Much worse." Admiral Valara stood completely still. In all her years of conquest, no one had ever said such words to her. No species had ever claimed to face something more dangerous than the Kthari Empire. What could be worse than us? She asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Taemin smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much. Ourselves. The aliens did not understand. How could humans be more dangerous than the galaxy's greatest predators? How could any species be its own worst enemy? Explain, Admiral Villara demanded. Not here, Taemin said. This is a formal meeting. What I have to tell you, it needs to be said in private. Away from cameras and records, Admiral Villara looked at the other alien leaders. Counselor Kixmoth nodded slowly. Warlord Nulvek shrugged, his crystal shoulders making a tinkling sound. Very well, Admiral Villara said. We will speak privately. But human if you are lying to us. I'm not, Taemin said. I wish I was. The formal meeting ended early. Schedules were changed. Plans were made. Admiral Villara would meet with the human diplomat in 1 hour. She would learn why humans did not fear the galaxy's most dangerous species. She would learn why his answer would change everything she believed about strength, about fear, and about what it meant to be truly dangerous. In the observation deck, stars twinkled through massive windows. Soon those stars would witness a conversation that would echo across the galaxy. A conversation about monsters, about survival, and about what happens when a species learns to face its own darkness. The question had been asked. Now it was time for the answer that would change everything. The observation deck was quiet except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Through the massive windows, stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. Admiral Villara stood with her back to the door, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. Taemin entered alone. He had left his security detail behind. Trust had to start somewhere. I have been thinking about your words, Admiral Villara said without turning around. You claim humans have faced something worse than the Kthari Empire. I find this hard to believe. I know you do, Taemin said. He walked to stand beside her at the window. Your people have been the apex predators of this galaxy for thousands of years. You can't imagine anything more dangerous. Admiral Villara turned to face him. Her yellow eyes reflected the starlight. Show me then. Prove your claim. Taemin pulled out a small device. He pressed a button and a holographic display appeared between them. The image showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. This is Earth, Taemin said. Our homeworld. It looks peaceful, Admiral Villara said. Pretty even. Looks can lie, Taemin replied. He touched the device again. The image zoomed in to show Earth's surface. Vast oceans, green forests, brown deserts, white ice caps. Your scientists would call Earth a death world, Taemin continued. The gravity is too strong. The weather's too violent. The life forms are too aggressive. Admiral Villara looked closer at the display. What do you mean? Taemin changed the image. Now it showed a great white shark swimming through dark water. The creature was 15 feet long, all muscle and teeth. This lives in our oceans, Taemin said. It can smell blood from miles away. It can bite through steel. We learned to swim in waters where these hunt. The image changed again. A polar bear walked across white ice. Even in the hologram, Admiral Villara could see the power in its movements. This lives in our coldest places, Taemin said. It weighs as much as 3 humans. Its claws are like knives. We learned to survive in lands where these roam. More images followed. Saltwater crocodiles that could crush bone. Venomous snakes that could kill with a single bite. Spiders whose poison dissolved flesh. Lions that hunted in packs. Eagles that could see prey from miles away. Your planet is full of monsters, Admiral Villara said. She sounded impressed despite herself. That's just the beginning, Taemin said. The images changed to show natural disasters. Hurricanes that flattened cities. Earthquakes that split the ground. Volcanoes that buried entire regions in ash. Tsunamis that washed away coastlines. Earth tried to kill us in every way possible, Taemin said. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Plagues that killed millions. Droughts that turned farmland into desert. Floods that swallowed whole civilizations. Admiral Villara studied each image carefully. Her warrior's mind calculated the threats, the survival challenges. How did you live through all this? We adapted, Taemin said simply. We learned. We became stronger. But you said we weren't the scariest thing you faced, Admiral Villara said. These are just animals and weather. Dangerous, yes, but not thinking enemies. Taemin's expression grew darker. You're right. The worst enemy was still to come. The holographic display changed again. Now it showed humans. But these were not the humans Admiral Velara had met. These humans carried weapons. They wore armor. They stood over burning cities. We learned to survive everything Earth could throw at us, Taman said. We became the ultimate survivors. We conquered our world, and then what? Admiral Velara asked. Then we turned on each other. The images began to tell a story. Humans fighting humans, cities in flames, battlefields covered with bodies, weapons that could destroy entire mountains, ships that could cross oceans to bring death to distant lands. For thousands of years we were our own worst enemy, Taman said. We built weapons to kill each other. We created poisons to destroy each other's food. We invented diseases to wipe out each other's children. Admiral Velara watched in fascination and horror. But why? You had survived so much together. Why fight each other? Because we could, Taman said. Because we were good at it. Because we had learned to be predators, and when all the other predators were gone, only each other was left to hunt. The holographic display showed more images. Humans in chains sold like animals. Cities burned to the ground because their people believed different things. Entire populations murdered because they looked different or spoke different languages. We enslaved each other, Taman said. We conquered each other. We committed genocide against each other. We did things to our own species that your people have never done to their worst enemies. Admiral Velara felt something she had not felt in many years. Fear. Not fear of these ancient humans, but fear of what they might become again. But you stopped, she said. You must have stopped or you wouldn't be here talking to me. We did stop, Taman agreed. But it took us a very long time to learn how. The door to the observation deck opened. Jiwoo Kim entered carrying a datapad. She was young for a xenobiologist, but her eyes held the same tired wisdom as Taman's. Admiral Velara, Taman said. This is Dr. Jiwoo Kim. She studies how different species think and act. Jiwoo bowed politely. Admiral, I brought the psychological profiles you requested. She handed the datapad to Taman, who passed it to Admiral Velara. The screen showed brain scans and behavioral charts. These are studies of human psychology, Jiwoo said. What we learned about ourselves through all those years of war. Admiral Velara studied the data. I don't understand what I'm looking at. Humans have two different systems in their brains, Jiwoo explained. One is old from when we were just animals. It tells us to fight, to fear, to take what we need. The other is newer. It tells us to think, to plan, to work together. All species have similar systems, Admiral Velara said. What makes humans different? We learned to choose which system to listen to, Taman said. We learned that just because we could kill didn't mean we should. Just because we could take something didn't mean we had the right to. Admiral Velara looked back at the holographic display, which now showed modern human cities, clean, peaceful, full of different kinds of people working together. You overcame your nature, she said slowly. We learned to manage it, Taman corrected. The old instincts are still there. The capacity for violence, for cruelty, for selfishness, but we choose every day not to give in to them. That's why you don't fear us, Admiral Velara said. Understanding began to dawn in her eyes. Because you've already faced the worst thing any species can face. Ourselves, Taman nodded. We know what it's like to be the monster. We know what it's like to be the victim. We've been both many times. Admiral Velara turned back to the window. The stars looked different now. Less cold somehow. Less empty. So when you see us, she said, you see what you used to be. No, Taman said gently. We see what you could become. The observation deck fell silent again. 3 beings from different worlds stood together, looking out at the vast galaxy. But now they saw it through new eyes. Now they understood that strength wasn't about who could cause the most fear. It was about who could choose not to. The alarm started as a low hum, then grew into a screaming wail that echoed through every corridor of Nexus Prime. Emergency lights bathed the station in red, turning shadows into moving threats. Admiral Velara spun away from the observation window. Her warrior instincts took over immediately. What is happening? Taman was already moving toward the communications panel. His diplomatic calm vanished, replaced by the focused alertness of a soldier. Station defense alert. Someone's attacking. The main communication screen flickered to life. A face appeared, if it could be called a face. Warlord Nulvex's crystal features reflected the emergency lights like a broken mirror. His laugh sounded like glass breaking in a storm. "Greetings, peace talkers," Nolvek said. His voice carried the joy of someone who loved destruction. "Did you really think we came here to negotiate? The Void Syndicate takes what it wants. Today we want this station." The screen showed the external cameras. Void Syndicate ships surrounded Nexus Prime like hungry wolves around prey. They were sleek dark vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "How many ships?" Admiral Velara demanded. 37, Taman said, reading the tactical display. "Heavy cruisers and assault carriers." "Against what defenses?" "Minimal. This is supposed to be neutral space. The station only has basic shields and point defense systems." Admiral Velara's claws extended automatically. "My ship is docked here, but my crew is on shore leave. We cannot fight a fleet this size." Through the windows, they could see small shapes detaching from the Void Syndicate ships. Drop pods, heading straight for the station's docking bays. "They're not just bombing us," Taman realized. "They're boarding. They want to take the station intact." "Why?" Jiwoo asked. She had pressed herself against the wall, fear clear on her face. "To prove a point," Admiral Velara said grimly. "To show the galaxy that peace talks are useless. That only strength matters." The first explosions shook the station. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the corridors. The station's AI voice spoke with mechanical calm. "Hull breach in Docking Bay 7. Hull breach in Docking Bay 12. All personnel evacuate to emergency shelters." Taman touched his communication device. "Captain Lee, respond." The reply came immediately. "I'm here, sir. Ship is prepped and ready. How many crew do you have aboard?" "Just 12, sir. The rest are scattered across the station." "Understood. Begin defensive operations." Admiral Velara stared at him. 12 crew? Against 37 ships? "The odds have been worse," Taemin said. He turned to Jiwoo. "Doctor, I need you to get to Emergency Shelter 7. It's the most protected area on the station. What about you?" "I have work to do." Through the observation windows, they could see the human ship Determination undocking. It was small compared to the Void Syndicate fleet, but it moved with purpose and speed. The boarding pods hit the station like material falling from the sky. Explosions echoed through the corridors as Void Syndicate troops cut their way inside. These creatures could phase through solid matter when they wanted to, but they seemed to prefer making dramatic entrances. "We need to reach the command center," Taemin said. "If we can coordinate the station's defenses—" "There are no defenses," Admiral Velara interrupted. "This station was built for diplomacy, not war. Then we make our own defenses." Taemin led them out of the observation deck and into the main corridor. The red emergency lights made everything look like it was covered in blood. Other beings ran past them. Diplomats, station workers, aliens from a dozen different species, all fleeing in panic. The first Void Syndicate troops appeared at the far end of the corridor. They looked like living diamonds that had learned to walk. Light passed through their bodies in strange ways, making them hard to focus on. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "This way," Taemin said, pulling Admiral Velara and Jiwoo into a side passage. They could hear the Void Syndicate troops behind them, their crystal feet clicking on the metal floor like deadly rain. Screams echoed from other corridors as the attackers found victims. "They're hurting us," Admiral Velara realized, "driving us toward the center of the station. Where they can control us all at once," Taemin agreed. Classic strategy. They reached an intersection. Taemin checked both directions, then led them left toward the industrial section of the station. "Where are we going?" Jiwoo asked. "To find Da-Yun Choi," Taemin said. "She's our engineer. If anyone can jury-rig defenses from civilian equipment, it's her." They found Da-Yun in the main fabrication bay, working frantically at a control console. She was young, barely out of engineering school. But her hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood machines at a deep level. "Da-Yun," Taemin called. She looked up, her face streaked with sweat and oil. "Sir, I've been analyzing their attack pattern. These Void Syndicate troops can phase through most materials, but there are limitations." "What kind of limitations?" "They can't phase while carrying large objects. They can't phase through energy fields, and they have to solidify completely when they fire their weapons." Admiral Velara stepped forward. "How do you know this?" "I've been watching the security feeds," Da-Un said, pointing to multiple screens showing different parts of the station. "They're good fighters, but they follow patterns. They make mistakes." On the screens, they could see Void Syndicate troops moving through the station like deadly ghosts. They appeared through walls, shot at fleeing civilians, then disappeared again before anyone could fight back. Can you build something to stop them? Taemin asked. Maybe, Doan said. The fabrication systems here can make almost anything. But I need time. How much time? 20 minutes for a basic energy field generator. 40 minutes for something that could really hurt them. An explosion shook the fabrication bay. Through the windows, they could see the human ship Determination exchanging fire with 3 Void Syndicate cruisers. Captain Hoseok Lee was using hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and then moving before the enemy could respond. He's buying us time, Taemin said, but he can't hold them off forever. More screens showed other parts of the station. Thari soldiers were fighting desperately in the diplomatic quarters. Hegemony workers had barricaded themselves in the life support center. Everywhere, people were dying. Sir, Dayun said quietly, there are civilians trapped in Section 12. Void Syndicate troops have them surrounded. The screen showed a horrifying scene. Alien families huddled together while crystal beings pointed weapons at them. Among the hostages, Admiral Valara could see some of her own crew members. They're not just trying to take the station, she realized. They want to break our spirits. Show the galaxy that cooperation leads to death. Taemin looked at the screen for a long moment. Then he turned to Daun. Change of plans. I need personal weapons. Whatever you can make in 5 minutes. Sir, that's not enough time to... 5 minutes, Taemin repeated. We're not waiting for perfect. We're going with what works. Admiral Valara stared at him. You're going to fight them? There are dozens of armed troops between here and Section 12. Yes, Taemin said simply. That's suicide. Maybe, but those people don't deserve to die because someone wanted to prove a point about strength. Daun's hands flew over the fabrication controls. Machines hummed to life, building weapons from raw materials. I can give you energy rifles. Basic models, but they should work. What about the phasing? Jiwoo asked. They have to solidify to fire, Daun said. When they do, they can be hurt. It's all about timing. The weapons finished printing. Taemin picked up 2 rifles, checking their weight and balance. They felt good in his hands. Familiar. You cannot do this alone, Admiral Valara said. I'm not alone, Taemin replied. Captain Lee is up there keeping the main fleet busy. Daun is down here building our defenses. Jiwoo is going to get civilians to safety. And you? He looked at the proud Cathari warrior. You can help me or you can stay here. Your choice. Admiral Valara looked at the screen showing her trapped crew members. Her people, who had followed her across the galaxy, now faced death because of someone else's war. She picked up one of the energy rifles. Lead the way, human. The corridors of Nexus Prime had become a maze of death. Taemin moved through them like he was born for this moment. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. Behind him, Admiral Valara followed, her warrior training keeping pace with his. They reached the first checkpoint where Void Syndicate troops waited. 3 crystal beings stood guard at an intersection, their bodies shifting between solid and transparent as they watched for threats. Remember, Taemin whispered. They have to solidify to shoot. That's when they're vulnerable. Admiral Valara nodded. In all her years of conquest, she had never fought beside a human before. She was curious to see how they handled combat. Taemin stepped into the open corridor. The Void Syndicate troops saw him immediately. They raised their weapons, their crystal bodies becoming solid and opaque. The first shot came from the left. Taemin was already moving, rolling behind a support beam as energy blasts scorched the air where he had been standing. But as he moved, he was also shooting. His energy rifle found its target, and the first Void Syndicate soldier shattered like a broken window. Admiral Valara watched in amazement. The human had turned himself into bait, drawing enemy fire so he could shoot back when they were solid. It was tactics she had never seen before, using vulnerability as a weapon. The second Void Syndicate soldier tried to phase through the wall to flank them. But Taemin was already there, waiting. The moment the crystal being solidified to attack, Taemin's rifle spoke again. The third soldier tried to retreat. Admiral Valara stepped out and cut off his escape route. Her shot was clean and precise. The corridor fell silent. How did you know where he would appear? Admiral Valara asked. Patterns, Taemin said, reloading his rifle. Everyone has patterns, even when they think they're being random. You just have to watch and learn. They moved deeper into the station. More Void Syndicate troops appeared, but each time, Taemin seemed to know what they would do before they did it. He fought like he could see the future. This is not normal combat. Admiral Velara said during a brief pause. You fight like you know these enemies personally. I know the type, Taman replied. Bullies who use superior technology to hurt those who can't fight back. We had plenty of those on Earth. They reached Section 12. Through the windows, they could see the hostage situation. Void Syndicate troops had gathered nearly 100 civilians in the main plaza. Thari, hegemony, human and other species all crowded together in fear. Warlord Nulvex himself stood in the center, his crystal body reflecting the terrified faces around him. He seemed to be enjoying himself. Too many, Admiral Velara said. We cannot fight them all. We don't fight them all, Taman said. We fight smart. He studied the scene carefully. The Void Syndicate troops were positioned in a standard perimeter formation. Good for controlling civilians, bad for dealing with external threats. There, Taman pointed to a maintenance shaft. We can get above them. They climbed through the station's maintenance tunnels. The space was cramped and hot, but it led to an air vent directly over the plaza. Through the grating, they could see everything below. Warlord Nulvex was speaking to the hostages. Your leaders think they can make peace with words. But only strength matters. Only fear brings order. Watch now as your peace talks die. He raised his weapon toward a group of Cathari younglings. Admiral Velara's claws dug into the metal grating. Those were children from her own ship's crew families. Now, Taman whispered. They kicked out the grating and dropped into the plaza. Taman landed rolling, his rifle already firing. Admiral Velara came down roaring, her own weapon blazing. The Void Syndicate troops were caught completely off guard. They had been watching the perimeter, not the ceiling. 3 of them fell before they could even react. But there were still too many. Energy blasts filled the air as the remaining troops returned fire. Taman grabbed Admiral Velara and pulled her behind an overturned table. We cannot win this way, she said. There are 12 of them left and only 2 of us. Then we change the rules, Taman said. He stood up in full view of the enemy troops. They all aimed at him, their bodies solidifying as they prepared to fire. Now, Taman shouted. The civilians moved, every single one of them. Thari warriors grabbed Void Syndicate weapons. Hegemony workers tackled crystal soldiers. Human diplomats threw chairs and tables. Even the children helped, tripping enemies and creating chaos. Admiral Velara stared in shock. How did they know to do that? Because I asked them to, Taman said, shooting another Void Syndicate soldier. While you were watching me, I was signaling them. Hand signals, eye contact, body language. Humans learned long ago how to coordinate without speaking. The battle became a whirlwind of motion. What had been a hostage situation became a riot. The Void Syndicate troops found themselves surrounded by enemies they had thought were helpless victims. Warlord Nulvex tried to phase through a wall to escape. But Dayan's voice came over the station's communication system. Energy fields activated. Phasing is now impossible in Section 12. The warlord's crystal body bounced off the wall like he had hit solid rock. Taman was there waiting for him. Surrender, Taman said, his rifle pointed at Nulvex's chest. Never, the warlord snarled. The Void Syndicate does not surrender to inferior species. Then you'll die, Taman said simply. But Admiral Velara stepped between them. Wait. She looked at Warlord Nulvex with something almost like pity. You came here to prove that only strength matters. But look around you. What do you see? Nulvex looked. The plaza was full of different species helping each other. Thari warriors were treating wounded hegemony workers. Human doctors were caring for injured Void Syndicate troops. Children from different worlds played together while their parents cleaned up the damage. I see weakness, Nulvex said, but his voice was uncertain. No, Admiral Velara said. You see strength. Real strength. Not the kind that comes from fear, but the kind that comes from choice. She turned to Taman. This human could have killed you already. His people could have destroyed your fleet, but they choose not to. They choose to protect instead of conquer. They choose to heal instead of harm. Why? Nulvex asked. Why would any species choose to be weak? Because they're not weak, Admiral Velara said. They're the strongest species I've ever met. Strong enough to control their own nature. Strong enough to be kind when they could be cruel. Strong enough to build instead of destroy. Taman lowered his rifle. The choice is yours, Warlord. You can keep trying to rule through fear, or you can learn to lead through something better. Nulvex looked around the plaza again. His troops were being helped by the same people they had tried to kill. Medical teams worked on everyone equally, regardless of species. Children offered water to wounded enemies. For the first time in his long life, Warlord Nolvex began to understand that there might be something more powerful than fear. I need to think, he said. That's all anyone can ask, Taemin replied. The immediate crisis was over, but something larger had changed. Admiral Velara watched humans work alongside aliens to repair the damage and care for the wounded. She saw the way they organized themselves, the way they shared resources, the way they protected those who could not protect themselves. She began to understand what Taemin had tried to tell her. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they had learned to use their strength wisely, and that made all the difference in the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the attack on Nexus Prime. Admiral Velara stood in the High Council chambers of the Cathari Empire, facing the most powerful beings of her species. The room was ancient, carved from black stone that had witnessed 3,000 years of conquest and war. You ask us to believe impossible things, said High Commander Zaktor, his scarred hide showing the battles of 50 worlds. You claim that humans are more dangerous than us, yet you also claim they choose not to use this danger. I do not ask you to believe, Admiral Velara replied. I ask you to see. She activated the holographic projector in the center of the chamber. Images filled the air above them. Recordings from Nexus Prime, data from human colonies, reports from across the galaxy. Watch, she said, and understand. The first images showed the battle at Nexus Prime, but these were not the dramatic moments of combat. Instead, they showed what happened after. Humans treating wounded enemies. Humans sharing their medical supplies with species that had tried to kill them. Humans working day and night to repair a station that belonged to no one and everyone. This proves nothing, said Counselor Methara, her yellow eyes cold with doubt. Any species can pretend to be peaceful after they have won. Then watch this, Admiral Velara said. The images changed to show a human colony on the edge of Cathari space. 3 months ago, a Cathari raiding fleet had attacked it. The humans had defended themselves, destroyed half the attacking ships, and captured the rest. What did they do with our warriors? Admiral Velara asked. The images showed Cathari prisoners being fed, being given medical care, being treated with respect. They showed human negotiators arranging prisoner exchanges. They showed captured Cathari ships being repaired and returned to their crews. They could have kept our ships, Admiral Velara said. They could have enslaved our warriors. They could have demanded tribute from us. Instead, they sent our people home. Why? Asked High Commander Zaktor. What did they gain from this mercy? They gained something more valuable than ships or slaves, Admiral Velara said. They gained respect. She changed the images again. Now they showed something that had never been seen before in galactic history. Cathari volunteers working alongside humans. Warriors who had been captured and released, now fighting side by side with their former enemies against common threats. Impossible, breathed Counselor Methara. I thought so too, Admiral Velara said, until I met him. A new figure appeared in the hologram. Taemin Park stood in a human city, but he was not alone. Beside him stood a young Cathari warrior, one of the prisoners who had been captured and released. This is Warrior Dexmon, Admiral Velara said. He was part of the raid on the human colony. When the humans captured him, he expected torture and death. Instead, they showed him their world. The images showed Dexmon walking through human cities, seeing how different species lived together in peace. They showed him in human schools, where children from a dozen worlds learned side by side. They showed him in human hospitals, where doctors saved lives regardless of what species needed help. He came back changed, Admiral Velara said. He told me that humans are not weak for choosing mercy. They are strong enough to choose it. High Commander Zaktor leaned forward in his throne. And you believe this? I know this, Admiral Velara said, because I have seen what they truly are. She shared her own memories from Nexus Prime. The moment when Taemin could have killed Warlord Nolvex but chose not to. The way humans organized the defense not to win, but to protect everyone. The way they treated their enemies with dignity even in the middle of battle. They are predators, she said. Make no mistake about that. They evolved on a world that taught them to be killers, but they chose to become something more. They chose to be protectors. The chamber fell silent. These were truths that challenged everything the Cathari Empire had believed for millennia. They had built their civilization on the idea that only the strong deserved to survive. But here was evidence of a strength they had never imagined. What do you recommend? asked High Commander Zaktor finally. Alliance, Admiral Velara said without hesitation. Not submission. Not conquest. Partnership between equals. They would accept this? Asked Counselor Methara. Even after we have raided their worlds? They have already made the offer, Admiral Velara said. Multiple times. They call it the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. Open borders, shared technology, mutual defense against common threats. She showed them the treaty documents. The terms were fair, almost generous. Humans asked for nothing they did not offer in return. They wanted trade partnerships, cultural exchanges, joint exploration missions, and if we refuse? Asked High Commander Zaktor. Then we become irrelevant, Admiral Velara said. The hegemony has already signed. So have 17 smaller species. They are building something new out there. A galactic community based on cooperation instead of conquest. The images changed one final time. They showed human space as it existed now. Not empty colonies scattered across hostile worlds, but thriving centers of mixed civilization. Kthari engineers worked on human ships. Hegemony scientists shared research with human universities. Even some former Void Syndicate raiders had found new purposes as explorers and peacekeepers. This is what they offer us, Admiral Velara said. Not defeat, but transformation. Not the end of our strength, but a new way to use it. High Commander Zaktor studied the images for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. You were my best admiral, he said. You conquered more worlds than any warrior in our history. If you say these humans are worthy of respect, then I will listen. He stood from his throne, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. Send word to the human diplomat, he said. Tell him the Kthari Empire wishes to discuss the terms of this treaty. Admiral Velara felt something she had not experienced in decades. Hope. There is one more thing, she said. The humans have invited us to visit Earth, to see their homeworld. Why would we want to see their planet? Asked Counselor Methara. To understand how a species learns to tame itself, Admiral Velara said. To see how predators become protectors. 3 weeks later, Admiral Velara stood in a human city park on Earth. Around her, impossible sights unfolded. Human children played with creatures that should have been their natural enemies. Large dogs that were descended from wolves, cats that purred instead of hunting, birds that sang instead of fleeing. Beside her, Taemin watched her reaction with amusement. Your planet is still full of predators, she said. Yes, Taemin agreed. But they're our partners now, not our enemies. A small human child ran up to them, chasing a ball. Behind her came a massive dog, a creature that could have torn a grown human apart. Instead, it gently nudged the ball back to the child and wagged its tail. How? Admiral Velara asked. How do you live with such dangerous creatures? The same way we learn to live with each other, Taemin said. With patience, understanding, and respect. The child looked up at Admiral Velara with curious eyes. She showed no fear of the 7-foot-tall alien with claws and scales. Instead, she offered Admiral Velara her ball. Want to play? The child asked. Admiral Velara looked down at the small human. This tiny being was completely vulnerable, completely trusting. In the old days, her people would have seen this as weakness to be exploited. Now she saw it as strength to be protected. She knelt down and gently took the ball. Yes, she said. I would like to play. As the sun set over Earth, Admiral Velara began to understand the final lesson humans had to teach. True strength was not about how much fear you could cause. It was about how much trust you could earn. The galaxy was changing. The age of conquest was ending. And in its place, something beautiful was beginning to grow. Later that evening, Admiral Velara sent a message to the High Council. It contained just one line. They do not dread us because they have already conquered the only enemy that matters, themselves. Now they offer to teach us how to do the same. The answer had changed her forever, and through her it would change the galaxy itself.